that we're not advocating coming in with a religious concept of any kind. Simply teaching origin science, evolutionary theory. We have no objection to that, as long as its weaknesses are taught along with its strengths.
Well, I can give you an example. Homology is one of the icons of evolution. That similarity of limb structure implies common ancestor. And that is taught. It's in all the books. They carefully choose the animals that have the same number of digits that a human does, a radius and ulna and the finger bones and all that. Well, it was assumed then that the genetics would confirm that you'd have corresponding genetic backup for the physical observation of the similarity of limb structure.
But guess what?
But guess what? It's not like that at all.
No.
Totally different genes bring out those traits in different life forms. And so that is not good evidence for the hypothesis that it leads back to a common ancestor when they have all that crisscross of genetic information.
And the students deserve exposure to these facts. And let's review the facts.
And there's been no religious implication or statement, just to let them know that. And
well, now take us through an expose of these facts.
Well, all I know is what I read in the paper. And Washington Post here, and back in '05 says, a Gallup poll reported there, a startling 55% of Americans do not believe in evolution at all. Now, they find that startling and alarming and depressing. I actually look at it the other way. I'm proud of the majority that sees the obvious.
In spite of being propagandized from every quarter, radio, newspaper, television,
education,
textbooks.
Museum,
yes.
All the animal channels, all that stuff. Nothing but evolution's ever showcased. And yet there's still 55% that say we've got doubts. Well, here's another poll in the Baptist Reflector reported in '05, says only 13% of Americans are atheistic evolutionists. Makes me wonder why then that 13% dictates the mechanism that, of course, maybe part of that 95% might be in that number as well, you see, in the controlling positions to make those decisions. Washington Post again, 87% of college professors are liberal, and religious faculty are more likely to be relegated to lower-tier colleges.
Yes.
There's a price to pay to take a dissenting view. You have to sort of go with the party line, is what I think of. If you want to progress on up, don't rock the boat, go along with it. Yeah, we know there's problems, but hush, hush, just don't tell anybody. This is an interesting one also. 49% of students surveyed say professors spout opinions off topic in class, and 29% of these same students felt they had to agree to get a good grade. 48% say campus presentations are totally one-sided. You see, a professor has a captive audience, and many of them probably do a disservice to take that captive audience. That is dependent upon them and his impression or her impression of them for their grade. And then they have basically have them captive for the duration for, again, indoctrination rather than education. And it's something that's a reality. And again, I'm only quoting these secular sources.
From the secular sources.
Also, we know that only 30% of kids raised in church will have an active faith as adults.
And we now understand the reason.
Exactly.
Not only is this true at the college level, it's true to a lesser degree, but pronouncedly so at the high school level, the secondary school level.
Said another way, up to 70% of all students who regularly attend church in high school will leave the church after they leave home. By and large, they are just operating on their parents' faith and don't have one of their own, and sadly, many churches have not recognized the relevance in the culture of apologetics and doing good work in the church to educate.
That's the reason for this program.
Exactly. Now, recently, this very fine movie by Ben Stein entitled Expelled, No Intelligence Allowed, pointed up the sad state of affairs, similar to these stats right here, and I don't know how many of the audience saw it, but I was reading in one of my publications I subscribe to, the American Family Association Journal. In that journal, very fine scholar, William Dembski, a mathematician, PhD
Personal
mathematician.
Friend of mine, yes.
Formerly at Baylor, not there now, but he wrote an article in that magazine, The Difference This Movie Will Make. And so I just thought many of his points were so valid and relevant that I want to basically do a book review or an article review.
Well intended, yes.
Of what he says. He says this movie explored the devastation of careers, reputation, tenure, and persecution of scientists who dared to doubt Darwin's theory of evolution and dared suggest that a superintelligence was a better explanation for the complexities of life on Earth. Now, where this is coming from, now that we know a little bit about the DNA, we find there's incredible design, incredible order, incredible complexity.
Yes.
But more than all that, incredible information in the form of instructions.
Yes.
And nowhere have we ever seen complex coded information or instructions apart from it coming from a mind or traceable
Certainly.
back to
And
someone's
intelligence.
mind. Your grandmother's apple pie recipe is complex coded instructions, perhaps in the English language or some other language, still coded, symbolic language, letters, words, sentences, thoughts, concepts. That's coded information. It's instruction how to make the apple pie. Well, it came from grandmother's mind. You see, even something we would consider simple still falls in that category.
Making an apple pie is very simple compared to the replication of a living cell.
Exactly. People tend to love this movie or hate it depending on their worldview.
Yes.
Very few people are truly neutral. They come to data with a bias. But no scientific theory should be immune from scientific scrutiny,
Certainly.
including Darwinism and evolutionism.
That is right.
This movie points up, Dembski says, the unhealthy state of contemporary science as it pertains to biological origins.
Yes.
Any question of it can be met with some of these repercussions here. The intellectual elite have insulated Darwinism from criticism and scrutiny. And the audience may be surprised to know that even on many Christian college campuses,
So-called Christian college campuses.
this
yes.
is still the case.
Yes.
Moreover, they have institutionalized the intolerance to any criticism of it. We just don't criticize Darwinism. And, you know, science is largely a history of having to get out a big eraser and change what once was thought to be true.
Certainly.
And it's a shame it takes maybe centuries for it to happen. Expelled, the movie, unmasks the hypocrisy of an intellectual class that pretends to value academic freedom of
Pretends
thought
to do so.
and expression, but undercuts and censors that very freedom when it conflicts with their entrenched belief system.
And it is a belief system unsupported by the facts. Evolutionary theory is unsupported by the
Well, and
facts.
some have said it's a no-God philosophy, evolution is, that has bootlegged its way into science classes. And they say it's a foundation, but really you don't have to know any of it to build a good microwave.
Certainly.
Or the space shuttle.
Or the space shuttle.
Or better medicine or whatever. Expelled suggests a way forward in this debate over biological origins. It exposes the flimsiness of the scientific evidence supporting evolution. And some examples of that have been given. Ben Stein interviewed one atheistic scientist after another, and the audience heard them admit that they did not have a clue how life began on Earth.
Now, wait a minute. You mean these major scientists, heads of departments at major universities, spokesmen for evolutionary theory, admitted in the interview when pressed that they did not have a clue on how life began on planet Earth?
Well, that was their statement. I only take them at what I heard them hear. I saw the movie twice. And yes, that's true. And I noticed most biology textbooks don't want to go back very far. They may be willing to go back to pond scum, and then they want to come forward. And they freely admit, well, we don't know how we got to pond scum, but let's just go from there forward. Well, of course you want to start from there and come forward. But to be consistent, they would have to admit that our family tree goes beyond pond scum, on back to just chemicals, non-living chemicals that washed out of a rock with acid rain falling on it, and before that, a hot molten blob, and before that, a big bang that occurred where a subatomic particle, smaller than an atom, blew up. There's nothing in the whole universe but hydrogen gas, but ultimately we get Einstein out of all that. So the hydrogen to humans hypothesis has lots of weaknesses, basically every step of the way. But
Every
hush,
step of the way.
hush, hush, let's don't do too much of that, you see, because the flimsiness will be evident.
And the flimsiness will be evident. To underscore what you're saying, some years ago in a book that I wrote, Why Do Men Believe Evolution Against All Odds, I cited the technical literature where leading scholars in this research field of life origins admitted in print in their own text that not only did they not know how life could have originated from chemistry of those rocks to a living cell, they admitted they couldn't even imagine how it could have happened. So all of this needs to be exposed in the public education. The student deserves the right to know this rather than all of that being salved over with propaganda.
Well, an example, such lame explanations as joy-riding bacteria that were piggyback riding on crystals were offered as one possible explanation.
With no justification. If that works, why isn't it replicated in the laboratory? We have billion-dollar facilities where we could, anything we could imagine, we could replicate if it's replicable.